that because the Prime Minister has just stepped up for the media conference in Perth.
Hello. Is everybody ready to go? Yep. Thumbs up from the cameras back there? Yeah, good, thank you. Well, I'm delighted to be in Western Australia, and I've just met with Premier Barnett, and I've taken the opportunity to make a new offer about school funding for Western Australia to Premier Barnett. I'm working around the country to make sure that every school, all 9,500 schools, have available to them the resources they need to teach the children in that school. I'm working to ensure that we fix the current broken school funding system and we get school resourcing right for generations and generations to come. And of course, this new money comes tied to new ways of working. I want to make sure that these resources are available so the kids that need extra help to learn to read and write and do maths get that extra help. The kids who are racing away, who have done all of the schoolwork and are at risk of getting bored, get a personalised program that keeps extending them. That schools have got the specialist teachers they need, the librarians, the music teachers, the language teachers. That schools have got the equipment that they need in the 21st century. When we first announced our funding offer for Western Australia, we said that to move schools in Western Australia up towards the school resource standard would mean an injection of $300 million into base funding in Western Australia, plus Commonwealth indexation at 4.7%, and we said we would require state indexation of at least 3%. That $300 million would be divided on a 2-for-1 basis between federal funds and state funds. When we first put out that offer, we'd taken into account that costs are greater in Western Australia because of the nature of this state, its vast size, but also the nature of its economy. Schools cost more to run here. Put simply, of course, teachers can go and get other job opportunities that could potentially pay them more. So Western Australian teachers are paid better than teachers around the rest of the nation. We'd already taken that into account in the first offer and said that the cost base here was 8% higher than other parts of the country. We've done some more work and some more figure work, some more research, and actually the cost differential is more like 11%. On the basis that we now better understand the increased costs of providing education in Western Australia, I have today told Premier Barnett that we are prepared to increase the offer that we have put for Western Australia to sign on to these school reforms. Our new offer would mean that the increase in base funding would be around $920 million, and then, of course, with indexation, that means that schools in Western Australia over 6 years would get an additional $2.8 billion of resources, divided $2 for every $1 coming from the Commonwealth to the state. So us paying 65%, the state paying 35%. We have just put that offer to Premier Barnett. I've put it to him personally. We will now have officials follow up with those discussions. But I do want to see Western Australian schools benefiting from better funding arrangements and from our national plan for school improvement. I do want to see every child in Western Australia going to a school that has the resources in it that are needed to get them a great education. I do understand that Western Australia wants to be fairly treated in this reform agenda. I want WA kids to get fair treatment too. And the new funding offer that I've put on the table today, I believe, is a very persuasive one. An extra $2.8 billion for kids' education here in Western Australia. I'm happy to take questions.
So it's now over.
We've reworked the figures. This is not changing the model in any way. The model is the same for all 9,500 schools around the country. A school resource standard, which is factored on how much it takes to teach a primary school kid, how much it takes to teach a high school kid, how much it takes to get them a great education. Then with loadings that recognise that if kids come to school from poor homes, Indigenous children, children with disabilities, children from non-English speaking backgrounds, it takes more to teach them, so there are loadings. And then for small schools and remote and regional schools, there are additional costs. So the model's the same, but we always factored into the model the difference in the cost base here in WA. We've done some more work, and as a result of that more work, I'm in a position to announce the offer today.
So Barry, balance between the foolish that decide on so quickly instead of waiting to do a bit more work.
These factors about the cost base would never have applied to New South Wales. They apply here in Western Australia because of the nature of the economy here and the fact that teachers are paid more here. And as a result, of course, the costs of schooling are more here because teachers' salaries, the costs of staff are such a big proportion of whole school costs.
So the basics are not to base salaries triple effectively from 300 to 900.
So the cost base change is from 108% to 111%. That does change the base funding from the 300 million extra to 920 million extra. Then there was always going to be the indexation. When you add in the indexation, that brings you up to the figure of $2.8 billion over 6 years. Well, the maths is the same as it always has been. We've always said for the increase in base funding, we would put in $2 for every one that a state put in. When it came to indexation, we would index our share at 4.7%, and we would ask states to at least have a 3% indexation rate. Where does it come from in terms of the federal budget? We made some savings, and many of them were controversial, but we made some savings to free up money to invest in schools, not only now, but for the long term, and those 10-year funding figures are available in the budget. Well, I spoke to Premier Barnett today, and I think it's respectful for me to suggest that you should get his response directly from him. When I saw Premier Barnett today, I said I would provide full details of this offer. I would certainly ask him to consider full details of this offer. I do not understand why anyone would stand in the way of children in Western Australia getting a better education and children benefiting from $2.8 billion in new resources. The characterisation in your question isn't right. We had always factored in Western Australia that there was a difference in the cost base here. So we'd analysed the difference in the cost base, and that gave us the 108% figure. We've done some more work and determined that the difference in the cost base is 111%. Inevitably, as you work through a big and complex reform like this, you've got information to consider, facts to consider, and when facts come to hand, of course, we take them into account. You wouldn't want people doing anything else, would you, ignoring the facts? Surely not. Well, the figures that I've put today are a reflection that on having done more work, we thought the cost-based differential more accurately reflected higher costs in Western Australia at 111%. That's what's driven the change today.
On another issue, you would have been briefed on a so-called withdrawal function.
Yes, I have been.
Not your body shape. What's your take on that? What's your response?
Well, I mean, this is Tony Abbott's Liberals. This is what they're like. And I think the real risk for Australia is if Mr Abbott was ever Prime Minister, it wouldn't be a question of what's on fundraising menus. We'd see this lack of respect for women littered throughout all of his government policy documents. Let's go through the pattern of behaviour here. Mr Abbott personally has gone and stood next to signs that describe me in a sexist way. We've had the Young Liberals hosting a function where jokes were cracked about the death of my father. And now we have Mr Bruff and Mr Hockey at a function with this grossly sexist and offensive menu on display. Join the dots.